patch. So when I go on Zoom, I either put that. Sometimes I put my face and the patch in the background because I zoom in my car a lot.
What's looking for?
Fucking thing. Just,
You want a high rise or?
It worked.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening, Madam Chair.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Hope everyone's well. Oh, man.
Madam Chair, you can just go.
Good evening, Madam Chair. You can get started.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. My name is Loretta Walsh. I'm a member of the Wilmington City Council. I am an at-large member and also a member of the Public Safety Committee, of which I'm chair. With the other members of council, those who are on this committee, identify themselves first and then those afterwards second. Starting with Mr. Spadola.
Hi, everybody. I'm James Spadola, City Council at Large. Happy to be with you tonight.
Rashima Dixon at large, Vice Chair.
Good evening, Chris Johnson, 7th District.
Good evening. Good evening, Xanthia Oliver, 3rd District.
Good evening, Linda Gray, 1st District.
Council member.
Michelle Harley, 4th District.
Yolanda McCoy, 6th District.
Ms. Fields, do you want recognition? Okay, let's get started. Other council members who come in can sign in later. Good afternoon, Chief.
Good afternoon.
How are you doing?
We're doing fine. How about yourself?
Good, thank you. Chief, I thought we would take you first because you have such a small thing to do this evening. And so could you please just bring us up to date as to what's going on with your class?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Our class. Okay, so we began a few months ago. We received 233 applications. After the physical ability test, we were down to 163. We had the written test last Saturday. We had 163 scheduled. We had 9 no-shows. We had 147 pass the exam. Very, very diverse group of candidates. They applied from over 9 states, numerous city residents. The interviews, the panel interview will start February 8th, and that should take approximately 4 days. Then we'll move on to the chief's interviews, physicals, background checks, and so forth. The class should start, let me get the exact date, on April 12th, and should graduate the 2nd week of July. So we are on target, meeting our timelines.
As you do appear to be. Can you tell me, you don't have to give me the names of the people, but who the interview folks are on the first round?
The interview, they will be chief officers, captains, and lieutenants from staff and suppression, and there will be two panels of 3.
And you interview everyone that comes off of that?
Yes, those that move forward, which will be determined by human resources, then I will interview those candidates.
And you don't have a quota for that?
A quota? No.
Okay. Thank you. Council members, does anyone have any questions? Councilmember Harley?
Yes, thank you. Okay. What's going on?
You have a fire?
Not me. Okay. Okay, thank you. So I heard the chief say that there were some no-shows. And how many no-shows was that, Chief?
I don't have the exact number for the physical agility test, but there was 9 no-shows for the written test.
Wow.
So those who passed the agility test move on to the written, and 9 people that passed the agility did not show up for the written. But that's not uncommon. We have a lot of people that apply at other fire departments, so they may have chose to go to, the route toward another fire department.
May I have a follow-up, Madam
Yes,
Chair?
council member.
So, Chief, do we do any kind of follow-up to find out if they're going to pursue or if they moved on? Do we confirm that with them?
The chief of training contacted numerous, but right now we don't call all of them because we have to keep our process moving along.
Okay, so I know that there was a strong effort to try to recruit those individuals. And so what is the total number of individuals that are being recruited?
We had, during our recruitment period, we had over 500 interest cards filled out. 500 people filled out a card saying they were interested. Out of that 500, 233 put in applications to go through the process.
And how many made the agility test?
163 moved forward from the agility test.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have, Madam Chair.
Thank you, council member. Councilmember Dixon, do you have your hand up?
Yes, Madam Chair. Just a quick question to kind of go off of what we've already started with. I know you said that out of the 147 that did pass, you did say 9 of them are from different states?
No, ma'am. 9 candidates from 9 states put applications in, from 9 different states, as far away as Colorado and Kansas.
Oh, wow. Okay. All right. And then I know you said that, do you have the breakdown as far as how many out of the 147 are from Wilmington and the diversity in the diversity numbers?
I believe there was close to 30 city residents. I don't have the exact number. And I believe there's 41 minority candidates left and also 7 women left that will move forward with the interviews.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, council member. Chief, do you have a waiting list?
No, ma'am. We do not have a waiting list.
So once this class is filled, that's it.
Yes. You may remember years ago, they hired certified people, and you could bring them on. So there was a waiting list for that. That wasn't very popular with council, so we have not done anything like that. We have full academies, and they go through the academy.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Spadola.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good evening, Chief.
Good evening.
Councilmember Dixon asked one of my questions, but I'm curious, what is the usual attrition rate for the academy?
It varies. I will say that the 38th class lost 2 during the academy. The 39th class, we lost 1. 2 weeks after they were hired, they went to another department. And I don't believe we lost any for the 40th class, was the last class we hired.
So it's pretty low, generally speaking.
Yes.
Good. Thank you, Chief.
You're welcome.
Council President Congo.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Chief, just following up on Councilwoman Harley's question about the follow-up phone calls. I think you said that you did call some, but not all. How do you determine, if that's what you said, how do you determine who's called and who's not?
the battalion chief of training was in contact with people after the fact, not the day of the test. And, you know, some people didn't answer their emails. There was various reasons why people didn't show up.
No, I'm sorry. I think Councilwoman Harley asked if we followed up on people who did not show up. And I think you said that you made calls to some, but not all. Is that what was stated?
I know Chief Looney called, made calls. I don't know if he called everybody, but this was after the test was already done. The agility test, it was already completed, not to get anybody in. This was after the test was completed.
Right. Do we know how that's determined on who was called that didn't show up and who wasn't?
Chief Looney's not here, but I do believe he contacted most people.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Can you tell me, Chief, was that more of an investigative reason as to why people wouldn't show up, period?
Yes.
And did he not contact some people who may have had a wrong phone number down or a wrong email?
Well, there are problems with people putting down the wrong email or not checking their email. We also had people come late, you know, and they said, oh, this is my time. And we knew, you know, their email said what time it was. So yes, that's what it was.
Councilmember Oliver?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was gonna say, I find that strange but I guess things do happen. If someone just applied for a job and put down the wrong email, I guess stranger things have happened. But we still have the Explorers program that does the training to prepare the youth for the fire services, the fighting services. Is that still in effect?
No, we cut it out of the budget last year. So it wasn't, we weren't getting the applicants, and it was cut out of the budget last year.
I mean, I remember that, but I thought that y'all were okay. And the WPD providing any training for inner city to assist, or y'all try any city youth to assist with passing the written test? Have y'all tried to? I see y'all did a tremendous outreach promoting projects. I saw some of the billboards where I guess I'm trying to ask, where some of the youth sit down and help prepare for the written test in advance, since you don't have the Explorers program anymore?
We use a testing company, and we send out practice tests for them to look at. One thing we did this year, we took a video of our agility test, and we sent that out to everybody. And that way they got to see exactly what they were up against. And I think that contributed to a higher passing rate. We're also going to put on a mock interview board that they'll be able to see.
Okay, and I guess lastly, so you have 37 minority candidates out of 147. Is that correct?
41 minorities left, minority candidates, and 7 women out of 147, yes.
Madam Chair.
That'll be all. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Councilmember. Anyone else have any questions for the chief?
Yes, Madam Chair.
Councilmember Harley, yes.
Thank you. So since, I know that there was such a lot of effort put out to recruit, I would just like to recommend that we call, because usually on the application, we have email addresses and telephone numbers. And since there was such a great effort put into recruiting individuals, I really would like for us to just at least call and leave a message and ask those individuals if they were moving on, or if they plan to move forward. I just think that that would be us doing our due diligence. Do you see that being a problem, Chief?
It's something we can look at for the future. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, for those that went through this recruiting process is what I'm talking about.
And contact them to find out why they weren't interested.
Well, no, just to call and make sure that there wasn't a hiccup of some sort. So, just doing our due diligence in terms of showing that we're really interested in recruiting them. I mean, if they went through they filled out the application, they went through the agility, and for whatever reason didn't do the written, especially if they passed the agility.
Yes.
Yeah, so just that extra effort of just trying to do our due diligence and making sure that they heard from us and we know that what their intentions are. That's all.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Council President Congo.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I'm just following up on Councilwoman Harley's.
Your microphone, Council President.
Okay, can you hear me?
Early.
Can you hear me?
No.
Hello? Can you hear me?
Okay. No, we can't hear you. Turn up your volume.
He's going to reconnect.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Just following up on Councilwoman Harley's statement or request. Chief, is that something that we're going to be able to do, that you can do currently, as what she just stated?
Follow-up calls?
Yes.
Yeah, something we could do.
Okay. And also just a follow-up, Madam Chair.
Yes.
Yes, Chief, can you define, when you say minority, can you break that down for us, please? I think you said there were 41 minorities. Can you define minority?
They're Black, Hispanic, Asian, Native American, and then we have some listed as other. And this comes.
Okay. Are you able to give a breakdown of? Okay. At this time, are you able to give a breakdown of how many of each fall into that category?
I don't have that with me, but I could get that for you.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Councilmember Gray.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to thank the police chief for his, I think he gave it to me twice a year, of the recruiting efforts and what happened to the various people that you recruited. So I thank you for that. But I've brought this up before, and I'm really concerned. Part of the hiring process is a psychological evaluation. And I've asked before which psychological tests that you are using. And I'm not asking to violate any HIPAA information, but has the psychologist that's interpreting this test maybe changed his screening based on what we saw happen on January 6th? I mean, there seems to be some attitudes that are becoming sprinkled throughout police departments and also military that we need to, I think, screen more closely for. So I'm wondering if the psychiatrist you're using is taking that into consideration.
Councilmember Gray, we're talking to the fire department right now.
I'm sorry. I thought we were talking to the police chief. I'm sorry.
No.
No problem.
Well, I'll save the question for then, but I'm going in and out here. Thank you.
Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Chairwoman Walsh. So, Chief, I know the issue of the waiting list has been brought up in the past. And is there any reconsideration of maybe bringing that back? Because you know, from my perspective, I see it as possibly a large amount of costs that go into this process. And, you know, if we lose great candidates, then we just have open slots. So is that something your department is considering bringing back?
Councilman, I tried to do this in 2017. Council was not very happy with it. We did it in the past for several years, and you hire certified people. Well, it was excluding a lot of minority candidates and city residents, but the only way for me to stay fully staffed would be to hire one-for-one off a certified list. There are more and more people getting the certification now. Delaware State Fire School is running academies, and they are getting those people certified. We could take them on, put them through the EMT course, but it would save considerable money not having an academy, because I got to wait till I have 8 vacancies. Right now, I have 16 vacancies. So it's an impact. The hiring process and the academy takes a while, and we still may get retirements while the academy's going on. So sometimes you graduate academy, and I'm sure Chief Tracy encounters the same thing. You have retirements, and you're already behind the curve. So we always hire a few extra. Hiring certified would definitely keep my authorized strength up. You know, I wouldn't have to do anything. Maybe run them through a 2-week orientation. They'd be in the company because they're already certified firefighters, and they attract firefighters from other departments.
Okay, thank you very much, Chief.
You're welcome, sir.
Councilmember Oliver.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. No, I was, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, no. I'm responding to with Linda Gray said, I would like to know with the hiring process, did you have anybody, I mean, with your outside agency, were they able to observe the individual's Facebook? Because there was a lot of individuals from the fire department that was at the Capitol also. So I'm wondering, was that program even used? Did they look into their Facebook or some other, maybe tattoos or other, I guess, other levels of hiring practice to identify some of the systemic racism that has been shown on TV?
We don't do a background check until we're past the chief's interview because it costs money. So once we get to that final cut, we will do background checks. Yes, ma'am.
No, when I say, I mean, I'm just talking about the Facebook, because listening to TV, a lot of this stuff was already on their Facebook pages. So do you, when you deal with your outside company or just in-house, I mean, when you look at the names, does anybody look at some of these individuals' Facebook pages?
We will be looking at them. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, good point. Thanks.
Madam Chair, can I
Yes.
ask a question, please?
Yes, I was going to get on to you when she was finished, Councilwoman Fields.
Thank you.
You have the microphone.
Thank you. I just have 2 questions, and maybe you answered and I didn't hear. My first question is, if they don't pass the test or the interview, are they allowed to apply the next class?
Yes, ma'am. We have many people that aren't successful on the first try, sometimes the second try, and they apply again. Yes.
Okay. And my second question is, I'm going to kind of piggyback off of Councilwoman Harley and my other council people. When it comes to following up, if you weren't able to reach them via phone or cell phone, were there letters sent out to these individuals?
No, everything was done via email.
Okay.
And they had the opportunity to fill out their application electronically, or they could print it out, fill it out, and bring it back to us.
Okay. Is that something that we can look into? And I know everything is being done electronically and different things like that. But just to be fair, to reach out to these individuals that may be minorities, just to say, hey, you didn't get it, or this is what happened, and this is the reason why, if their email isn't working, or if they change their phone numbers. 3 points of contact is always key when it comes to reaching out to candidates. And I don't know, like, I don't know if it's in your budget. I don't know how it works, but I just think 3 ways of contact. That way, it can't be said that they weren't contacted. And do you have, and you said you do or you don't have the number of individuals that weren't contacted at that time?
I'd
Or
have to check
that
with,
weren't told.
I'd
that
have to
they-
check with the training chief, the chief that's in charge of the academy. I don't make the calls myself.
Mhm. Okay. All right. That information would definitely be beneficial, so that we can figure out, help you all work with you all to figure out better ways to contact these individuals. Thank you. That was it.
Thank you, ma'am.
Anyone else?
Yes,
Council
Madam Chair.
President Congo?
Thank you. Chief, will the Public Safety Committee be given an email or just a follow-up on the attempts to reach those individuals who did not show up for the second part of the test? I know you said you were going to follow up. Would those efforts be given to the Public Safety Committee?
I will check with Chief Looney. We can give you that. Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no more hands, I'd like to thank you and your staff for appearing today. Chief Donohue.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Look forward to your information. Thank you.
Madam Chair, there was one other thing on the agenda. I didn't know if you missed it. It was current Firehouse coverage. I don't know if there's something you need to cover there.
I actually forgot about it. So yes, please. Thank you for pointing that out.
Okay. Presently, all the companies, there is no rolling bypass or anything that nature going on. All the companies are in service, fully staffed. The only thing we have going on right now is fire station number 4 at 22nd and Tatnall is closed. It's having all new HVAC, apparatus floor heaters, backup generator, new electrical panels. All that is being performed. It should be done in 2 to 3 weeks. Those companies, Engine 4 and Ladder 1 that run out of that station are relocated. Engine 4 is running out of Station 5 at 1800 block of North DuPont Street, and Ladder 1 is running out of Fire Station number 3 at 30th and Northeast. But that's basically it. Everything's in service, up and running.
As of January, the beginning of January, I know of this year, I think you had 141 sworn personnel.
Yes, ma'am.
Are we still there, or has that changed?
We're down to 140.
Okay. So one more,
Yes,
which is one more in the class.
correct.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Excuse me, Madam Chair.
Yes.
Could he send us a copy of the upgrades for the various stations, if you don't mind?
The upgrades to Station 4?
Yeah,
Absolutely.
thanks a lot.
Okay.
Thank you, council member. Okay,
Okay.
thank you again. Chief
Thank you.
Tracy. Chief Tracy, we're on to
Good
you
evening,
now.
Madam Chair.
Good evening. How are you?
Doing well. Stay a little
Good.
dry in headquarters.
Good. Okay, Chief, we have a couple things on the agenda. Why don't we get rid of the grants up front? So we will do the resolution for the overtime costs for narcotics investigation first.
Yes, ma'am. This is discuss a resolution approving the police department's grant application to the state of Delaware Department of Safety, Homeland Security support overtime costs for narcotic investigations. This is actually a grant offered by the state of Delaware Department of Safety and Homeland Security through its Emergency Legal Drug Enforcement Program, which is called EDI. We are invited to apply for these funds each year, and we are eligible for $30,518.40 in grant funding. These funds will help us to cover overtime costs for anti-violence initiatives undertaken by our Drugs, Organized Crime, and Vice Division, and this grant does not require any local matching funds.
Chief, let me ask you something on this type of grant. I see this a lot on TV with police type shows and stuff when they're talking about their finances. And one of the things that's always said is that an awful lot of the drug money for our country has dried up because the Homeland Security Department is always focused on terrorists, whether they be civilian or non. And is that a true statement to make?
No, I believe there's forfeiture programs that are still going on. I think what might be happening now, the rulings on what can be forfeited is starting to tighten up. And I think some of the money that's usually be funded, asset forfeiture, that used to be funneled back to the police departments, now has tightened up with some of the rules, pushing back on what can be taken in the courts. And, you know, the Department of Homeland Security, it does go into an overall pool. We have to apply, but our grants have stayed pretty similar, or from what I've seen since I've been here, each and every year. And we make sure that we apply for them, or some other jurisdiction in the state's going to get them if we don't apply for them.
No, I understand that. They just seem terribly small. And like, seriously, how much money and how far does a $30,000 grant go towards overtime?
Absolutely. Every little bit helps to try to offset, supplement the budget we have. I wish it was more. Certainly with everything that's happened in the last year, we certainly could use some help with our supplementing our overtime budget, but I might agree with you. It might be kind of small in the grand scheme of things.
Thank you. Council Member Dixon.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Chief, I just wanted to know, as far as what's the normal amount that we apply for each year? I know you said that we apply each year for it. How much is usually the amount that we apply for?
It's usually the same amount. I would have to go back. It's on our overall budget every year, and these grants, they expire. They usually go 2 to 3 years out. So you have a couple of years to use them, and then you reapply each year, and they continue to extend. But I can absolutely get the exact numbers for you and space it out right off the budget report. But I can send that over to the chair.
Thank you. And just another follow-up question.
Yes.
Is there, as far as what's the outcomes based on us doing overtime, as well as for that narcotics piece? What have we seen as outcomes as a point for having these grants?
Well, the outcome is not only we go in the high crime areas where we certainly have violence, because sometimes narcotics and violence go hand in hand. So a lot of these investigations supplement or support each other. And as I get into some of the in the end of the year reports, you're going to see a lot of work that's been done to take guns off the street and gun arrests off the street. A lot of them have a narcotic nexus. And so this overtime is used in part and parcel to overall straight time work.
Okay, and then is there data that just go along with that? I'm sure you may have that during your report period. Just wanted to see how much is the percentage that is going to the narcotics piece that's found in the city.
Right, and the breakdown of overall overtime from drugs, organized crime, and vice. This is just one piece that it's no matching funds, but there are actually going to incur overtime within that unit, and that breakout we do for the budget, and be happy to send that over.
Thank you.
Council President Kondo.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, do we still have the ability to let the public make comments during these meetings?
I'm sorry.
Do we still have the ability to allow the public to make comments during?
You're almost, it's hard to hear you once again. But
Yeah.
yes, we do have the capability of the public making comments, but they get to do that after council members do.
Okay, thank you. Is that, because I think someone wanted to make a public comment for the fire department. I'm not sure if they were given the opportunity.
Must have
Well,
raised
if they weren't here for the opportunity, then how was I going to call on them?
Yeah, they weren't here, 'cause I didn't see it. I'm looking.
So I'm sorry, but no, I can't. But yes, if they had waited until the end, nobody had a hand up, public
Okay.
or council.
Okay, just want to clarify that. All right, thank you.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Spadola?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good evening, Chief.
Good evening, Councilman.
I'm curious, how is this overtime money deployed? Is it in a proactive or reactive sense in the sense that, is it done, hey, we've gotten a bunch of tips about, we think this address is selling drugs, let's do a sting? Or is it, hey, on a next Friday night, we're going to go into this high crime area, first 5 officers sign up, the overtime's yours? Can you elaborate on how it's deployed?
It's deployed in many ways, and sometimes it can be off long-term and short-term investigations. There's surveillance, there's confidential informants that give us information. There's places like you just talked about, setting up on a location, setting up cameras reviewing cameras, making sure that we're looking at these cases that go hand in hand to what's happening with the violence that's happening on the street, and also narcotics. Not to get too deep into what our operations are, but it's a lot of it's proactive planning, making sure that when we're doing those surveillances, this overtime is in place, that we can actually help supplement the budget that we already have for overtime.
Thank you. Council, any other council members? Councilmember Harley?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I did want to wait until all the other council members ask questions directly impacted by the topic. This is a small question that I have for the chief because one of my constituents wanted to know when there are raids or when WPD are looking for individuals in communities, and when the police run into someone's yard and damages their property, they want to know where do they go to be compensated for that, especially since there was like no knocking on the door. There was just ramshot kind of behavior. And I understand the WPD are trying to do their job. However, in some cases, you have individuals that cannot afford to put new fences up, cannot afford to to replace that damage. So what suggestion do you have, a recommendation where they can reach
Risk
out?
management.
Excuse me?
Councilman Hawley, first of all, when any of these type of entrances to these homes, unless there's exigent emergency exception, we go before and petition before a judge to get a search warrant, and when we go to a location, to make sure everything's done in the proper way and we satisfy all the requirements. If there's property damage that's done, we can follow up with risk management to see a replacement of the damage that's been done. But I'll get the exact protocols on this. I haven't run into too much property that we've had this type of damage that hasn't been repaired. I know that's what we've done in other cities, but I'd like to get you the right protocols in place that a constituent whose property has been damaged, if we had to forcibly enter a location, how we can make sure they're made whole in repairing that property or that location.
Okay, Chief, I would appreciate it because their property didn't have anything to do with what was going on. And so that would be great. So you'll have someone to email me the practices or protocol, or procedure, I guess that's what you would call it.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Actually, Chief, could you send it to the committee and we can share that with the entire committee?
I will send it to you, Madam Chair. to
Thank
distribute.
you.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have.
Councilmember Oliver.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Trees Tracy, I guess I'm wanted to ask you the question. It's not an elephant in the room about the status or what is being done in reference to the high crime rate here in the city of Wilmington. I mean, we've talked to some outreach, different history programs, individuals who have various programs, but just what is the police department? I know you can't tell us your private practice, but just in general, because I see we have a lot of people on here that want to hear what's going on with your, I guess, your actions or what's just going on from your point of view, from the police point of view, with the killing in Wilmington.
Okay. Madam Chair, do you want me to go through this? I'll be happy to go into the crime reports and explanations of what we're doing.
I want to get the resolutions out of the way first.
No, I'm sorry. Go ahead, get that. I'm sorry. I skipped. I'm sorry. I'm not even
That's
looking
all
at my card. I'm doing two things. I'm sorry.
Thank you. Any other council member on the resolution? Does anyone from the audience, DeMarquis Hall? This is about the resolution.
Good evening, everyone. I actually agree with Councilwoman Xanthia Oliver, 3rd District City Councilwoman. I wish she could have kept going. I don't think that we should move forward with resolutions until we know what it is that is going to help the community that is suffering the most. We know that more police and more dollars being spent towards more guns and more time to investigate crimes that have already been committed don't stop or prevent crimes from happening. They don't save any lives from being taken. I agree with Councilwoman Xanthia Oliver. And I think that we should hear Chief Tracy tell us what plans are in place, what people, what organizations, what resources we're using to try to prevent
Mr. Hall,
devastation
Mr. Hall,
from happening.
this is about
Instead of going
the
forward to
resolution.
resolution after resolution after resolution, we need solutions.
Mr. Hall,
Solutions.
Mr. Hall, this is about the resolution. You will hear the chief
We need solutions.
address. You will hear the chief address these issues further into the meeting. Okay? We're getting these out of the way. We're getting these out of the way so we can spend more time doing that.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay? So stay on the line and we'll get you when that comes up.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. I see no one else from the public. Oh. Ms. McDowell, is this in regard to the resolution?
Yes.
Go ahead, ma'am.
I see that the discussion is the resolution approving the police department's grants. It's saying that it's trying to support overtime costs and narcotics investigations. I feel as though that our main concern is not narcotics at this time. Our main concern is the killings that are going on in our neighborhoods. So is there any type of grants put in place that you guys are putting in for as far as trying to like get things to help us in our community? Because the police getting overtime, I don't understand what is that going to do. They're already on the streets during what regular time that they're on a schedule and they're not doing anything. So what are we asking for overtime for?
Well, I think the chief explained already that this grant is very little and that with regard to the narcotics investigations that they do, they also go for getting guns off the street. If I misquoted you, Chief, please interrupt me.
Yes, please chime in, Chief. Thank you.
You are correct, Madam Chair.
So you're against the application for this or for it?
I'm against it.
Okay. Thank you for your time. Anyone else from the audience who would like to speak? Any council members who would like to say something? We don't have to vote on this since it's a resolution.
No, Madam President, I was just going to say, I think, I was just saying I was in favor of it because if it's going to get some guns off the street, we need as many guns taken off the street as possible with all this high crime. So if it's overtime, it's going to help the officers, help trying to find some people who have guns that shouldn't have them. I'm all in favor of that.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Spadola?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, this is more of a philosophical related to the resolution, and I think everybody on this call would agree that the war on drugs has been probably, in terms of government programs, no bigger failure in terms of the decades that we've been fighting it, the billions of dollars that have been spent, the amount of people locked up, and you can still get any drug you want anywhere in Delaware. So, Chief, I'm just curious, taking that into context, how does Wilmington fight the war on drugs differently? Especially post George Floyd.
Okay, but here, Mr. Spadola, this gets into a whole philosophical conversation, and I understand where you're coming from on this, just as members of the public also. But is this really on the grant?
Sure. Well, it is in the sense that this money is for narcotics or drugs. So I'm just looking to hear how the chief. I know I have the utmost respect for the police department, so I'm just curious to hear how the department will institute this in a way that is more than respectful to the community and actually moves the needle and isn't just more of the same.
Thank you, Chief.
Councilman, that's a great question. Been in policing, started 37 years ago, worked in high narcotic areas that also had a lot of violent crime. And one of the things that happens when it comes to narcotics is that it usually drives the violence as well, competition for places that you're going to be. So we have to make sure we have to get between it. Yes, there's laws in place. There's been part of things where draconian laws in New York State. In 2003, they reduced the Rockefeller drug laws. I agreed with to make sure that we over-incarcerated and different levels and tiers for narcotics, with some people for an ounce of crack went away for 15 years versus just powder cocaine that they did 2 to 3 years. And we're all for that as far as making sure they get reduced in New York. When I was running the firearm suppression division, but we actually bought narcotics to get guns.
Okay, Chief, if I may, I'm sorry.
I'm going to finish this up real quick, Chairman. And what we did is, I'm all for reducing that, but at the same time, we reduced the sentencing on those things. But at the same time, that we started taking gun violence and carrying an illegal firearm very seriously, and we upped the charges and ensured our prosecutors and our judges and the legislator got tough on guns, because that was the real problem, was people picking up a gun, possessing an illegal firearm. And when you possess an illegal firearm, it's a gateway crime to murder. So yes, I believe that it's not, we should be reducing some of these things. We should look at them carefully. We should look at drug addiction and treatment and be compassionate. But at the end of the day, there's still laws on the books that we were sworn to enforce. And certainly there's a lot of violence. So we still have to address them because they do go hand in hand.
Ms. Fields, on the resolution.
On the resolution, thank you, Madam Chair. I think your last sentence answered my question, Chief Tracy. They go hand in hand. So if you're getting overtime for the narcotics, but the guns play a major part in narcotics, because that's the way that they move. That's how they operate. Guns and narcotics, narcotics and guns. Is that what you're basically saying? They play a major role in they play a major role together. So the overtime would be justifiable. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, and I'm also saying that where there's places where there's narcotics in some of the same areas that I worked back in New York, once the violence stopped, I don't see any less narcotics coming out of the area, but I think their business model changed where violence wasn't good for business. And not that we're not going to enforce the laws, but it's not bringing our attention to them in the same areas. So I wish we can condition people. I'm not saying I'm advocating to allow people to break the law, but at the same time, I'm about reducing the violence and keeping people safe. And that's the number one thing that we should all be looking at.
Thank you.
Councilmember Harley on the resolution.
Yes, ma'am, Madam Chair. I just wanted to make one quick comment just for clarification. Sometimes I know when the public is listening to the dialogue, they may not fully understand these grants, but I just wanted to mention that this, $30,000 grant is free money. There's no matching funds that are required. So it's no money coming from the taxpayers for this particular support for overtime costs for narcotics investigations. So I just wanted to make that clear that no one's tax dollars are going towards this. It's a local, no local funds are required. Thank you.
Well, and you mean no city tax dollars are going towards it?
Yeah,
Well, all the money we get, especially federal government grants, come from the taxpayers also. So
no, I'm talking about just city. That's all we're talking about. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, no other council members? This is last call for council members. James W., you have not spoken yet. From the community, James W.
I'm on now. Can you hear me?
Can we have your name, please? Full name? I'm sorry.
James Wright. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. What I was going to say has already been addressed by Councilwoman Fields, her statement, and then a follow-up with Councilwoman Hardy. Guns and drugs are one and the same when you fight on the street. One helps the other. So, and again, that money that comes in, it's not coming out of the city budget, so we should be supporting that request.
Okay, thank you. Wayna? Wayna?
Yes, Madam Chair, can you hear me?
Yes, full name, please.
Wayna Dobson. I reside in the 3rd District. My question is, do you have the area that you're going to concentrate the overtime that's going to be spent in the community? Do you have a designated community that it's going to be done in?
Chief?
We look at areas, we look at high crime areas, we look at where most of the violence is happening, because we talk about guns and drugs, drugs and guns. Absolutely, we work off of complaints. Most of a lot of our investigations start from the community, asking for us to address some of the situations that are happening next door or on their block. So we do prioritize a lot where the violence is happening. And so it depends on what part of the community where this is happening, or we'll start to see trends that kick up and immediately intelligence of areas that we might see conflicts kicking off, or we know that there might be some retaliatory things that are happening, and we try to get in front of that, not reactive, but proactive. And this is part of the things that we do. So it's in every part of the city that there is narcotics that we take a look at, but we certainly have to prioritize it. And it's in some of the areas that we're having most of the violence.
And can you tell me currently where you are having most of the violence?
Well, it's actually in, we can look at several, we have 9 districts in the city. I would say 6 out of the 9 right now do have narcotic sales and have had shootings and up since last year, or since 2019 into 2020.
is there one area that has more than the others?
There are areas that it's concentrated in. You can see just even by our alerts that go out and notifications from Nixle alerts, where recent shootings have happened, but we can't pinpoint any single area. Some of the areas share the same challenges that in different parts of the city. We're above the Brandywine in certain areas. We're on the east side. You could be in West Center City. You could be up at Hilltop. These certain areas, if things start kicking off, we could be down in Southbridge or Browntown, Riverside. These are certain areas, North Market Street. So it's not to say it's just one specific area, but we certainly take a look at it, use everything that we can with our intelligence information, try to stay ahead of these things. Some things calm down for a while, and then sometimes they kick off, and we'll make sure that we're trying to cover each area with our patrol units. Narcotic units is not to give up the size of it, but it's not, most of the stuff is done by the men and women that are wearing the uniform and staying proactive and trying to make sure that we can reduce crime in every area. And then when there are specific spikes or things that we're having complaints on, a lot of narcotics in every city come from citizen complaints and certain areas that we take a look at. And from community meetings, 49 civic associations. If the community is coming back about a certain location at the civic associations, which we're attending every one, which wasn't done prior to 2017, we're listening. And then we have to respond in a certain manner with each one of our captains that cover that area. So to specifically say each area, we have our challenges and we continue to look for innovative ways. And a lot of it, I heard a couple of questions. What are we working with social services agency? Listen, there's addiction issues out there. And how are we going to be a good partner with the community, state agencies, and overall plan and a comprehensive plan to try to get ahead of this.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, that's it for the questions. Let's move on to the second grant. Second grant is also a application to Homeland Security for $56,281. This is in regard to purchasing, I think it's 20 new taser units. Chief?
Yes, ma'am. So this grant is offered by the state of Delaware, Department of Safety and Homeland Security, through the State Aid to Local Law Enforcement Program, which is called SALLY for short. We were invited to apply for these funds each year, and we were eligible for $56,281.62 in grant funding. And these funds will cover the cost of purchasing non-lethal taser conducted energy weapons, which are tasers, for each member of the department's 100 Police Academy. Each taser purchase includes taser device, cartridges, batteries, software, and warranty. It is consistent with which each of our officers already carry that are not in the academy. This is an important piece of equipment for our officers. It provides an additional non-lethal option and tool for officers when they encounter individuals violently resisting arrest or posing a significant threat to residents and officers. Even in the past year, we've seen calls for this equipment in cities as close as Philadelphia, where we are fortunate that our officers already have carry tasers. My last department in Chicago, it was just the sergeants that had tasers. I think it's waiting for a sergeant, if he's not on the scene, making sure that each and every one of our officers has one is really going to help us in certain situations that can get volatile. And this grant will allow our newest officers be issued tasers to use during the academy training and when they are on patrol at the graduation. And this grant does not require any local matching funds.
Council members and members of the public, this part of comment or question is about this particular resolution, please. And then we can get on to the meatier portion of the committee meeting today. So does anybody have any questions on the taser guns? Councilmember Johnson.
Chairwoman Walsh. Chief Tracy, can the funds for the taser grant, can it be used for any other equipment, or is it only limited to tasers?
At this time, this was open to its tasers. This is something that we applied through, and it's proportionate with the amount that's, as a city agency, our biggest competitors are the state police and the county police, because we're the three largest police departments in the state. And then there's 49 jurisdictions. The smaller agencies get smaller pot of the money. This is something that has to go before a board. It's voted on and it's approved. And there's other things that you can apply for, but certainly we thought we were in need for this and to make sure that we can save that expense to our city taxpayers.
Okay, and may I have a follow-up, Chairwoman?
Yes, council member.
So, I know we've had this in the past, I think in the 107 session with like scooters, for instance. So just to clarify that the money used for the tasers can't be used for anything else, right?
No, we can't.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Dixon.
Thank you, Chairwoman. I just wanted to know, Chief, also, I know you said it's for this academy. Have we incorporated this with any other academies previously, or is this a new concept that we're adding to the academies?
No, I believe in the past, we've had them budgeted within our overall budget to supply our officers with it. This budget, there's certain things that we had to look at because of the economic times. So we're looking any way we can find someone else to fund it or a grant to fund these type of things that are in need. It actually relieves our taxpayers and helps supplement, not supplant our budget. So we look at this to make sure that we can save on this in our budget. So
okay.
Yes, but the answer is yes. We actually have these things for through our training classes. Actually, officers have to, I know even when I came here, I saw the first academy was the 98th Academy 3 years ago. It was the first full academy when I came upon as the chief. And the training in the state of Delaware, these officers had to be tased to know exactly what it feels like to be tased as they use the weapon and what can happen to a person when you are tasing them. So that's not done in other places. So yes, they were trained in it. And the thing is, we want to make sure that we can use this money with our officers in the academy.
And just a follow up.
Yes, council member.
So currently, so now you said, Chief, that we normally had it within our budget period. And this is more so allowing the federal government to help with fulfilling that need. So currently, our other officers all have these tasers as well?
Yes, all our officers are equipped with the tasers in the Wilmington Police Department.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, we're not forfeiting that to give to them, making sure the ones that are on the street have that.
Okay, great, thank you.
Councilmember McCoy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My question, Chief, is for the amount of the grant, how many tasers do you expect to be able to purchase? And exactly, do you know how much each unit actually costs?
Well, with the amount that we're purchasing, we're getting 20 tasers with this. So you would break out each taser includes the device, the cartridges, the batteries, and software and warranty. So we break out 20 into 56,000 is what the costs are. And I say that comes out to about 2,800 per taser.
Okay. May I follow up, Madam Chair?
Yes.
Thank you. And Chief, just wanted to ask exactly how long does a taser actually last? How frequently do you have to replace these?
Well, and that's an ongoing cost, Councilwoman. Great question, because they don't last forever. That's why we have the warranty if they break between that time. I know we're moving in because some of the costs that we had to build into the budget is that they're going to be expiring. I want to give you the correct answer. I believe it might be between 3 and 5 years to the next model. They're forever updating them for us and what model's coming out. But can I get back to you on that one? Because I want to be accurate with that question. But I'm not sure if they were able to get in, but I have my inspector, Inspector Ash, she's the head of operations, and Inspector Emery, who's the head of administration, that might be able to get in. I see Inspector Ash. Madam Chair, can I have her answer that question? She is our expert in this.
Yes.
Inspector Ash.
Yes, Councilwoman, in reference to your question, it, as the chief indicated, is covered by a warranty, and that typically can last anywhere from 3 to 4 years.
Well, Madam Chair, I just wanted to, I don't believe that was actual follow-up, the answer I was looking for. I just wanted to find out how frequently do you need to replace these, since these will be brand new going to the academy. When it comes to the rest of our officers who actually already on the force, like when do you need to purchase?
Yes. I thought he said they normally last 4 years.
Right. So I was just looking to find out when we'll probably end up having to purchase new ones.
Yes, so Chief, if I can answer that. So with that, Councilwoman, we do that. So it would not be one lump sum where we would have to apply again. Once we get these on board, that gives us the ability to do it over, small increments and small course of time. So, the next series may need to be replaced, but it would be under a warranty and under a new contract. So it would not be one lump sum of replacing that. If that does answer your question, ma'am.
Thank you. That is closer to the answer. Thank you very much, Inspector.
Yes, ma'am.
Councilmember Oliver.
Thank you. So you said this is no matching grant also, correct, Madam Chair?
No matching grant.
Right. So no matching grant. This is also a good grant to have applied for, that we can get some stun guns opposed to officers out there in their first line of duty would be to use regular handguns. So I'm glad to hear that they will be trained to use the stun gun. So they have another line of defense, to use opposed to automatically pulling out their guns. So this is a good grant, especially with no matching funds from the city. Thank you.
On the resolution, council members. Okay, we'll go to the public. DeMarquis Hall.
I have a couple questions for the chief. I'm going to be quick.
On the resolution.
I'm going to be quick. As long as the chief is quick with his answers, I should be done in 3 minutes. I just want to know first, what happened to the grant money for body cameras?
This is on, it's
That's
like,
a question for the chief. What happened to the grant
Well,
that
I'm
was
running the
awarded
meeting,
for
so
body cameras?
I'm running the meeting, so I'll decide where the question goes, okay? And I think you're bringing up a subject that doesn't belong with this grant.
It's true.
Okay.
So I'm sorry. I mean, you're acting like I'm picking on you, and I'm not. I was very clear about, if you have a question, we'll be more than happy to answer them. Just stick to what we're dealing with right now. And right now we're dealing with the grant for the tasers.
So grants for tasers seem like a great idea. They seem like a great plan. In 2013, there was a movie that was made that had Michael B. Jordan starring in it. It was called Fruitvale Station from out
I
there
saw the
in
movie,
San
and
Francisco,
the movie is not on the
California.
agenda either.
Right.
Okay.
So the police officer who killed this man, who murdered this man, said that he thought he had his taser. He received 2 years. He only had to serve 11 months. Walter Scott in 2015 was killed in South Carolina by an officer.
Okay, DeMarc.
He was running away. He was shot in his back. The officer
Does this
said that
mean
he stole his taser. He took his taser. He lied and said Walter Scott took his taser.
Does this mean you're against?
These incidents were captured by cell phone video. They weren't captured by body cameras.
Does this
The only
mean
reason
you're
that any
against?
justice at all was served, the only reason why these officers were actually charged and served their little bit of time that they had to serve was because of video. Body cameras are
Now, I think
essential
I've been very, very
to
polite with
justice
you, and I don't think you're
people
being
that are
polite with
shot
me
by
at
the
all.
police in Wilmington and throughout
All
the
right.
nation.
Christina.
This nation deserves better. This city
Christina.
deserves better. We fought for a grant to be awarded so that we could have protection. for all people, not just the people that are in the public that are doing the best that they can, that might have been in the wrong place at the wrong time, did the wrong thing, said the wrong thing, pissed somebody off, and then the officer that
Marquis, you're out of
does
order.
what he does. If
You're out
there's
of
an
order.
officer that is doing the right thing, he's protected by the cameras. Why aren't the cameras being utilized? Why are we asking for grants, for overtime,
Chair.
for
You are,
tasers, for more
yes,
guns,
Yeah.
for Trek scooters,
you're
$10,000
out of
a
order.
piece?
Yes.
Why are we getting all these grants for everything that doesn't protect
Well, I'm
anyone?
trying to get
Why
the
don't we ask for
office to
grants
handle
for
it.
prevention, for programs,
Christina,
to
she don't hear
actually
you?
instill some kind of community, some kind of effort to prevent crimes from happening, instead of using these dollars to just hurt people further?
On.
Why?
Thank you. Thank you. Christina?
Hi, thank you.
May I have your name,
for giving me
please?
the opportunity. Yeah, my name is Christina, Christina Kelly. I am, I don't want to say that it's so much a question. It's not so much a question. I'm concerned. I understand that it's a federal grant and that there's no city matching funds. However, we are talking about just 20 tasers. We are well aware that the police force is, substantially larger than that. At $56,000 for 20 tasers. So when these have to be replaced force-wide, not just this 20, in 3 to 4 years, as the inspector stated, where are those funds coming from? Because you cannot guarantee us another federal grant being available in 3 to 4 years. What is the future budgeting that this is going to cost the people of the city of Wilmington?
Well, I believe when we get to the budget, if more are needed, there will be money in the budget for that. As of right now, we're dealing with the application of this resolution. And if that means because of future budget reasons you won't be for this, you can go on the record as saying that.
And I will do so. However, the issue here is that you're talking $56,000 grant right now with no future finances in play here. So you've not told the people of the city why we should be okay with these kinds of grant applications coming through when we have no idea what it's going to end up costing us. Where we should be able to say, hey, no, we don't want you to apply for these extra 20 tasers until we know what it's going to cost us going forward.
I believe on equipment like this, it's almost impossible to say when it's going to have to be replaced or if it's going to have to be replaced within a year or two, 3 or 4. We're dealing with the
but you were just given a time frame from the inspector where she stated very clearly 3 to 4 years on average is when they need to replace. So, and the chief himself stated that these do expire and they do need to be replaced. So to say that these are potential variables or potential costs to come up is inaccurate. These are definite costs that will arise in the future. And these are costs that need to be known before you just pass through applications to
we
give
all
out.
heard the same thing. So is that what you want the answer to be? 4 years from now, we're going to have to replace them? Because they're all not on the same time limit either. That some of them were replaced. They all weren't. If we have 60 with the department right now, all 60 weren't purchased at the same time.
Right, but we are now talking about 20 that are being purchased at the same time. So we are talking about 20 that are going to expire.
So these 20 will expire in 4 years.
Right, so then that's $56,000 at least in another 4 years that we are going to have to worry about. Is it going to come from the city or is it going to come from federal funding from another possible grant that may arise in 3 to 4 years?
And how could we possibly know that?
I don't appreciate the way that you're speaking.
And how could we possibly know that?
Question.
We don't know if Congress would continue the program, and if
You're
this is
right.
if this
You're
is
right,
a
but
question
guess
just
what?
to start an
When you
argument.
run a business, you don't purchase equipment without knowing what that equipment could potentially be costing you going forward. These are operating expenses.
Thank you for your
operating
input.
expenses should
Keep
be
moving,
should be
please.
counted into the purchase process.
Thank you for your input. Ms.
Yeah.
McDowell? Ms. McDowell on the resolution?
Yes, my name is Kendra McDowell. I would like to know the same thing, being as though I live in the city of Wilmington. How much is this going to cost us in the future? That's how much I would like to know.
I don't know.
So
Neither
you
does the
expect
chief.
us all to agree with you guys buying 20 tasers that's going to cost 56 something thousand dollars or whatever. And then you can't tell us what the fine print is going to be. You cannot tell us how much we will have to pay in the future to purchase new ones if we need to, or to fix whatever it is we need to do with these new tasers. Yes, I understand that the inspector said there is a warranty, but we're still, as taxpayers, going to have to come out of our pockets for something. And you mean to tell me nobody on this meeting with information can tell us how much we would have to pay in the future? Like a lump sum, a quick figure, how much will we have to pay?
No, nobody at this meeting could tell you that.
Oh, okay, I forgot. We're Wilmington. We just have money to throw away and waste. You're right. I'm done.
Thank you for your time.
No, thank you.
Councilmember Fields?
I believe Councilmember Oliver was first.
Councilmember Oliver?
No, Madam Chair, I'm sorry. I had hit it by mistake. I'm sorry.
Thank you. Councilmember Fields?
I guess my question to Chief Tracy and I can't remember the other. Was it the other late? Was it Inspector, the one that actually spoke on the
Right,
tasers
Cecilia,
and
Yes,
stuff?
who's an inspector?
Okay. I guess my question to you is, when you say that, and I'm trying to get this right because I'm trying to get this right from the community as well. So what you're saying is, okay, so we're on a warranty 3 to 4 years. After the 3 or 4 years, we're not sure if we pick it up. So let me ask you this, and it's not all at the same time. So is this a grant that we continuously apply for? And if so, do all of the, are we able to utilize it to do what we need to do for the tasers that may need some type of maintenance? I know that you said that this grant does not affect the taxpayers at the time that we apply for the 3 or 4 years, however the tasers last. But let's just say given 5 years, at the end of 5 years, the tasers aren't working. Do you apply for another grant? Or is this all in the warranty? After 5 years of use, you can extend the warranty for the tasers to be fixed or whatever the case may be. I think that's important. And you've been doing this for a while, getting this grant for the tasers. So at what point do the taxpayers actually have to come out of their pocket and pay for the tasers for their for their maintenance? At what point do we have to pay for it if you've been doing this program for so long? Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Fields. Councilwoman, on this, not every year there's a grant for them. And when they're staggered, like the Inspector Ash talked about, it's not a bundled cost for all of them. These are new this year. We have some that expire next year and some expire the second year. And it's a rotating basis that we make sure that when we get them in, when these ones will expire at a different time when we're getting newer ones for different offices. We really like to keep them at the same number, and as officers retire, and then we have officers coming in, this one happened to be one where we needed to get them all together. We didn't have additional. They're always put into a budget, just like our vehicles, just like other maintenance, just like capital improvements. Each year in our budget, we look to see what we have. We present that budget before City Council, and we look for this type of equipment. Here we had an opportunity to go before the Sally state allocation local law enforcement grant and say, hey, there's a need for this because we have an academy class this year. Let's see if we can offset putting this into our budget because we would have had to put this into our budget. We weren't going to not have our officers trained and to go out there without having a taser. It's less than lethal force. It's something that can help us de-escalate and try to keep us away from some of the things that, and make sure that we have other alternatives to make sure that we can put the sanctity of life and protect people and property. So those are the things that we're doing. I'm going to let Inspector Ash go in to, the rotation, how they're done, how we put them into the budget. And I know it's not every year that we're able to get a grant, but we were able to get one this year. Inspector, I'm sorry, Madam Chair, may I have the inspector answer the rest of this question?
Yes, Chief.
Thank you, Inspector Ash.
Councilwoman Fields, so the chief is accurate, and basically what we do, and just as we do with any grant that we apply for, where I think in his first points, we're trying to be fiscally responsible through COVID and looking at the different budget cuts and how can we apply for federal grants or local state grants that will provide money for this. So exactly to his point and to Sarah's point, is once we apply for these grants, then what ends up happening is that money is then rolled into our operating costs, because just as with any of these grants, you can't keep going back to the same pot of money every year, because then those agents would be asking, where is your sustainability to that type of project? So it is something where, we look for this money to help the department, and we would then roll those costs into our operating costs for the following budget year.
Thank you, Inspector.
Thank you.
Councilmember Dixon.
I'll concede to, I know they were in front of me, Councilwoman Gray and Council President.
Oh, I'm sorry, Council President, I didn't see your hand.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. And I just wanted to thank those two members from the community who posed those very valid questions about the fiscal impact that the grant could have and will have. I just want to thank Chief and Inspector for addressing their questions. They were very valid, and I think that we have to continue to I think that it's kind of easy just to assume that we're getting a grant and that it's not going to have a fiscal impact on us later. I know that's what I've done, and I just want to make sure that we're not doing that, that we are taking into consideration the fiscal impact that these grants will have on us long term. So thank you again to those members from the public who posed those questions.
Thank you, Councilmember Gray, on the resolution.
Thank you. I'd like to thank the police department for finally being able to answer the question very accurately and understandably. I also thank the community members like our president for posing that. But I am in support of this taser grant. It's a less lethal method of control. But I think the public should know that almost any grant that we apply for, if we want to continue the program and the grant's no longer available, almost always it's incorporated into the budget. That's with any of these, I call them toys, but any of the aids that the police department get or any other grant for any other use. Once the grant runs out, the program's usually incorporated into the city's budget. But thank you. But I am in support of using.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Dixon.
Thank you, Chairwoman. I just wanted to know, and I think Inspector Ash would be helpful from what the public is asking too, is from what our average cost in the past has been for the tasers that we put in you put in your operating budget, and then how many typically are within the budget. I think that would be good for that way we see it, and also the public knows what the normal cost or typical could be for it.
Absolutely, we'll get that over to the chair for the council.
Thank you. Okay, before we move off of this, just for a couple seconds, I am really not trying to be contrary with anybody at this meeting. That one of the things, you can't ask what something's going to cost 4 years from now, because Nobody has an idea of what the cost factor will be at that point. But number two, hopefully there will be a new weapon that comes on the scene that is even less invasive than a taser is in being able to have a police department deal with somebody else. And because anything that can stop an officer from having to use a gun or even a taser would be most welcomed by everybody in every community. So that's one of the reasons why I'm not answering these questions, because they're all hypothetical, and we'll go on from there. All right, we're going on to our next point. Chief, we've had a couple articles about us in the last couple of days. One of the reporters is not here anymore either. And with some of the comments that were made in the articles themselves, I almost call it a major fear factor. And some of them were very hard to read because the statistics seem to contradict like a sentence, 2 sentences before it's printed. So how about if you just give us an overall about what's going on and what has gone on in Wilmington, and we'll go from there. How about on the end of the year? Review of the shootings and deaths.
Madam Chair, the end of the year report that we published is online as of January 14th. And today the mayor released a joint statement for him and myself articulating the challenges and some progress that's happened in the city of Wilmington. And I'd be happy to share some overall statistics from 2020. And we can get further into gun violence and arrests, what we've made for gun possession, and how our agency has responded to what we and the communities across the state and country have seen in 2020. Overall crime in Wilmington has seen a reduction. I'm talking about overall crime in major crime categories, and then a 6% reduction compared to the 2019 totals. Our murders, unfortunately, they were up 31, 29 of them by gunshot compared to 23 in 2019. And that parallels what's reported in cities across the nation and some of the challenges that we've had both in COVID, unrest, and a lot of other things where there's been interruptions in services with the community and social services for obvious reasons, and communication amongst all agencies really took a hit, and it certainly has shown in some of the violence across the United States. Shooting incidents, similar to the prior murder offense category, there was an increase in shooting incidents, 135 compared to 89 in 2019. And shooting victims, 168 compared to 112 in 2019. This also follows a regional and national trends for the past year. And you can read more about our efforts to combat this violence, as well as additional data about gun arrests in that report. We had reductions in several categories year-end 2020. One was rape, 46% decrease, robbery, 15% decrease, burglary, 8% decrease, and felony theft, 8% decrease compared to 2019 data. And we also had an overall reduction in auto thefts. We've tried to increase our efforts on reducing this through public announcements, personal outreach, and engagement by officers to spread awareness. How leaving a motor vehicle with the keys in the ignition or a spare key or a fob is going to help increase the amount of motor vehicle thefts that happen. And it's usually used as a vehicle, not just a joyride, but to do other things and sometimes leading to violent crime. Regarding the violence, the gun violence, in cities across the country, law enforcement executives have reported increases in gun violence, even amidst the reduction of overall crime. We have seen this in Wilmington as well. Our patrol officers, investigative specialized units have continued to work to identify trends and taken action to mobilize shift resources and adapt to these trends. We've also continued to work with our partners throughout the criminal justice system, prosecutors, court officials, and all our other federal agencies, and share with them the results of our intelligence gathering and ensure we collectively do everything we possibly can to ensure the safety of our communities. One of our most critical objectives in the years come to continue our intensive partnerships and collaborations with the Newcastle County Police Department, the Delaware State Police, the Delaware Department of Justice, the Delaware Probation Parole, the United States Attorney's Office, our federal partners, ATF, DEA, FBI, U.S. Marshals, and the Delaware Department of Corrections, amongst others. Particularly in the face of increased gun violence and record numbers of gun arrests this year that our agency made in 2020, our agency has enhanced existing collaborations with our partners, holding weekly meetings, establishing around-the-clock communication protocols for intelligence sharing, and conducting joint operations to identify and apprehend those responsible for a majority of this violence. On the flip side, we continue to move forward with our group violence intervention, and it's not just about arresting people with the highest propensity of violence. It's trying to get them to social services with the moral support of the community to make sure we're working with them to try to make sure people are not repeat offenders, first re-entry back into the community, and also try to prevent them from recidivism and continue to live a life of crime. Maybe we can get them to get the help that they need and certain lot of resources. I've gone over what group violence intervention has been in several other public committees. If I would go into this, I would take too long to go through it. So I'd rather, if we can go into what the report's about, I'd like to do that and leave it towards some of the questions, Madam Chair, or I would be here for a little while just to explain group violence intervention, but it's the three parts. It's enforcement, it's the message, it's the moral voice of the community, and it's the social services that are probably the most important part to the individuals with the highest propensity for violence for themselves and their families. We will continue to leverage these longstanding partnerships in our efforts and that of our partners, and we'll continue to address those offenders with the highest propensity for committing violent crime and to prevent gun violence. And one of the biggest things that I've seen here, I've seen in two other places, and how we were able to reduce violent crime, we have to treat carrying an illegal firearm seriously. There has to be consequence if we're going to keep our community safe, if you're going to pick up a firearm. And I just want to go through a couple of statistics. This year, by far, we've made more gun arrests this year than any time in history. Going back as far as I can go back with the numbers. We're up over 150%. I'm sorry, 85%, almost 150% from 2 years ago, 85% from last year. But we made 307 gun arrests this year in past year, 2020. We made 171 in 2019, 164 in 2018, 210 in 2017, and 242 in 2016. So you can see exponentially these numbers have gone up. In our first 2 months of 2020, we had more juveniles arrested with guns than all of 2019. Think about young people with guns. And there's a lot of things that we can do and be compassionate about helping them, but releasing individuals right back into the community when they're carrying a legal firearm is not going to solve the issue. We got to get them the help, and that also has to make sure that there's rehabilitation, and then sometimes with the adult's consequence. So out of the 307 gun arrests, there were 293 defendants, which means more than a dozen were arrested by our agency more than once in 2020 in the same year. 143 of the 293 defendants, almost 50%, had prior gun arrests. One of the 293 had 6 prior gun arrests before this. So this was the 7th time arrested this individual. One of the 293 had 5. So that they had 6 prior gun arrests. They had 5 prior gun arrests. Now they're 6. 11 had 4 prior gun arrests. 13 had 3. 42 had 2 prior gun arrests. And 75 had 1 prior gun arrest. 13 of the defendants were arrested twice by WPD on 2020 gun charges, and 1 being in relation to 3 firearm investigations alone. At the time, 115 of the 307 defendants were on some form of probation or pretrial supervision at the time of their arrest for the gun charge. And of the 293 defendants, they collectively had 3,300 felony charges, and 5,100 misdemeanor charges. For the juveniles, they accounted 50 of the 293 defendants. And of the 53 of the 307 gun arrests made in 2020, 20 of the 50 juveniles had prior gun arrests. Little less than half already had. One of the juveniles had 5 prior gun arrests alone. 3 of the juveniles were arrested twice this year on gun charges by our agency. And at the time of the 35 of the 53 arrests, a juvenile defendant was on some form of probation or pretrial supervision. It's more than 2/3. The 50 juveniles collectively had almost 500 felony charges and 545 misdemeanor charges. And to break down the ages of the juveniles at the age of their gun arrest, we had 1 12-year-old, 5 14-year-olds, 5 15-year-olds, 18 16-year-olds, and 24 17-year-olds. And following arrest and arraignment for all gun offenders, bail was set as follows. 15 arrests resulted in release following arrest without any bail set. 53 arrests resulted in unsecured bail and release without having to post any bail. 77 arrests resulted in secured bail, requiring some bail to be posted, which is usually 10% of the amount. And 155 arrests resulted in cash-only bail, and with many committed to correctional institution pending further judicial proceedings. And as of December, 124 of the 293 defendants remain incarcerated. So 60% of all gun arrests have been released and they're back out in the street. You can see multiple times have been arrested. So we'll continue. 2 of them, after being released, were victims of homicide. What we're doing is trying to make sure that we have a thoughtful way working with our prosecutors, working with the judicial system to ensure that we have to take a look at these things seriously, because the thing on the street, and this is not anecdotal, but it's been told to us, that there's no penalty for carrying a legal firearm. And then what happens is more people carry a firearm because they say more people have them because there's no penalty. And it's a vicious circle. I've been in places where we got tough on illegal firearms and made sure we followed up on them for both making sure we could help people. And at a certain time, if they're not going to take the help, there's consequence to make sure that they don't get back on the street, because even a gun offender, when they go back out in the street, also has a high propensity to be a victim. And when we go through the victims of gunshot, the numbers mirror exactly what I talked about as far as that percentage of carrying firearms and being a victim. They're a victim one day and they're a gun carrier the next, and vice versa. And we have to get serious about that if we're going to continue to talk about the shootings and the murders. And we're going to keep doing everything that we do, Madam Chair. But at the end of the day, this is a real issue. And there's some of the things that I pointed out. We're going to continue to work on them. And I can get into some of those things, but I know you want to get into what are we doing this year. Well, this year, there was a handout that went out to everyone for today's CompStat, just to see exactly how we're doing in 2021. And so far on this handout, we have the murders, shootings, and shooting incidents and shooting victims. So far this year, we have 3 homicides compared to 1 in 2020. Even with 2019 with 3, 2 homicides in 2018, 6 in 2017 as of the 31st in 2017, 1 in 2016, and 6 in 2015 as of this date, year to date. Shooting incidents. This year, we have 9 shooting incidents as of yesterday, as of midnight. Compared to 2020, we have 9 shooting incidents in 2020, so it's flat. In 2019, we had 10 shooting incidents at this time. 2018, which was a 15-year low, where we were doing things with guns and addressing individuals who pick up a firearm, I think a little better than what we're doing now. 5 shooting incidents. 2017 at this time, we had 19 shooting incidents. 2016, 5, and 2015, we had 10 shooting incidents. Those shooting incidents resulted in 12 victims we have so far this year, shooting victims. 2020 had 9 at this time this year. 2019 has 13. 2018 has 5. 2017 had 22 victims at this time. 2016 has 7, and 2015 has 4. When I talked about the guns, what's alarming already after setting a record last year, we're up 10% in recovering guns in the month of January. And it's up 360% versus 2019. It's up 40% versus 2018. It's up 100% versus 2017. It's up 70% versus 16 and 113%. This is gun arrests, people carrying firearms, that our officers are out there trying to stay ahead of it, trying to identify individuals that might be carrying firearms to try to make sure we can get between them. And then on top of all the other investigative leads that we do to try to solve these shootings and murders, work with the community, work with people that are coming forward, working with witnesses, working with evidence, working with video. And that goes right down to even shots fired incidents, shots fired, where we look at and we investigate each and every one and work with the community, work with the neighbors, work with witnesses and video at every one of these where there's a legitimate gun used, but nobody was a victim. So those are some of the numbers, Madam Chair. I didn't want to go, there's other things I can go into, but I'm sure there's going to be a lot of questions, but those are my open remarks on the closing of the year and how we're doing this year so far.
Thank you, Chief. And I think I'm going to do this up front right now, and that's we're going to, as of right now, limit the conversation to an hour and a half tops. Councilmember Gray.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Chief, I had suggested this before, and it wasn't a good idea back then, and it is a monetary cost. But what about a gun buyback? People are financially strapped. They may be more inclined to turn the guns in. I heard that Philadelphia and other cities have done it and gotten pretty good results, and like you say, any guns off the street are better than being on the street. So it's just a suggestion, but what is your opinion at this time on that?
Councilwoman, you came in a little low, but if I could repeat this, make sure I'm answering your question. Considering other places have used gun buybacks, people have, they could use the money if they have guns, and certainly it's something to get any gun off the street is one less gun out there to potentially be used in violence. I've seen white papers on gun buybacks. The individuals that are using these firearms and have access to these firearms, as you can see, the amount of arrests we're making and the amount of people that are carrying them. There's sometimes community guns between a certain group. The only way I see some of those guns coming off the street, which are in large supply, is that if we make an arrest and we confiscate and voucher them. I've been around where they've come in, but sometimes there's been loopholes where it wasn't just city residents. With the vicinity that I see here, with Pennsylvania, Delaware, New Jersey, and Southern Delaware, sometimes we got to make sure it's done thoughtfully. Do you restrict it to people that live in our state or live in our city to be eligible, or do you bring it wide open to make sure you can bring in as many guns as possible? And some are bringing antique guns, some are bringing guns that are not operable. There's a lot of things. I know Philadelphia, this is about Wilmington, but Philadelphia does do that program, but they just had the second highest murders, the most murders since in 20, 30 years. There was 500 murders. I'm not too sure if we can get the funding, if we can find out what we can do and do it properly. I'm all for it. I don't know how much it's going to have on the on the impact of what we're dealing with right now, when I just see that there's not a consequence of carrying a firearm in the city of Wilmington.
Thank you. That answered the question.
Councilmember Johnson.
Yes, Chief Tracy. I have a few matters I want to hit on first. Actually, I'm just gonna kind of just take it kind of high level. In regard to the state budget right now, how much money does the city of Wilmington actually get for directed GVI services? Because I look at a $4.7 billion budget, and I'm not really sure how much is actually getting to combating crime in Wilmington. Do you have any stats on that?
Councilman, could you just repeat that question? I apologize. I just want to make sure.
Yeah. So
understand.
How much of the state's budget directly goes to fighting crime in Wilmington? I'm just going to be upfront. It's a $4.7 billion state budget. How much actually goes directly to fighting crime in Wilmington?
Well, I do know one area with the group violence intervention. The state has partnered with us with the social services, creating a group violence intervention. And once again, I think that's when used properly and executed. And, you know, we're in some really hard times right now on how to implement a lot of things or successfully bring people all together in the same room because of COVID restrictions. That being said, I know the governor has, you know, easily, it might be $1.5 million has been invested into that program with social services and a coordinator, a director, and all the other services. As far as all the other grants coming in, I think a lot of it also still comes through the Criminal Justice Council. It comes from the SALI grants that we just talked about, with the ED grants. SLEEF is another grant that just wasn't on this agenda because we weren't eligible, or we're not putting in for something or applying for anything for this meeting. So the numbers, you know, I could take a look at some things that come in, you know, funds to combat violent crime. This year we're spending, we've already talked about this in council and for the resolution, but for the FY21, that's $341,000. When it comes to the Burn JAG grant, that's coming from the feds. We have a COVID grant that's also coming from the feds. So I want to be really careful because I don't want to underscore the money that's coming in and what we're using. I want to be really careful with our partners and how much comes this way. But I do know, because they'll look at the size of our police department with state and county, and we do get our largest share because we're the 3 biggest police departments. So if whatever pot that they have, we're actually always at the top. We might not have always asked for it before. I felt that we lost a lot of money and left it on the table. And now we're really fully engaged to make sure that we have it. And that upset a lot of our other jurisdictions because when we weren't asking for it, our rightful money that was broken out at a percentage, other jurisdictions would come in and grab it, but because we weren't asking for that. We're now fully asking for that. I have Inspector Chuck Emery. He attends every one of these meetings. He sits on there as part of the boards on my behalf as a proxy to make sure that we don't lose any money that might potentially be there to help supplement our budget. So both inspectors, Madam Chair, I just want to make sure if there's something I'm missing as far as the total amount of what's coming out, it wouldn't be fair for me to give an exact number because I tried breaking it out from the sheets I have, but am I missing any type of money that either one of the inspectors see? And Madam Chair, may I defer to one of my inspectors?
Okay, thank you.
Inspector Emery?
Yes, sir. I think you hit on basically all the grants, where the money comes from. At this point in time, I don't think it would be prudent for us to give a number without really doing some more research to give you the exact amount, as the chief stated. But we can work on that for you and get you the information.
And I really think that we could probably I'd like to check with Finance, Office of Management Budget, and then see exactly what is coming in for support, if not just police, but overall in the city, Councilman Johnson?
Okay, and Chairwoman Walsh, may I ask a follow-up?
Yes.
This is, and it's kind of related in a way, but one stat that kind of popped out to me is the clearance rate. So it went from 64% in 2016 to 40%. Is there a reason for that? Is the community just not talking? Is it need to be better community policing relations? I mean, what is the reason for the lower clearance rate?
I would probably, in my experience, where we were on the upward trajectory in 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020, we in policing, there was a lot of things that we were dealing with this year. And I think the biggest hit on top of everything else is when you lose the opportunity to have that in-person meetings. Also put on hold was community meetings that we attended. We attended every community meeting, every civic association, either with my captain or lieutenant or the officers that work the same area every time that they're there. And that interaction also took a hit, as does relationships between friends and family that couldn't see each other. And I think when you start to lose that human connection and that type of communication, and then what's happening, and then as far as trying disruptions in that, I believe that takes a pretty big hit. I think detectives, because of everything that was going on, there was protests every weekend, if not every other day. We were dealing with COVID. I don't want to really get into the numbers, but we do wear a bulletproof vest, but there was nothing to protect us against COVID. And our department, the amount of people quarantined and came down with COVID, our numbers are pretty large. So that affected us as well. And then even in the detective bureau, they kind of worked together. They got hit hard a couple of times where I had to quarantine a lot of detectives. Some of these cases, that increased the caseload of existing detectives that are working. There's so many things that go into it, Councilman. I'd like to, it's me trying to speculate from experience. And hopefully when we're out of this, we can right the ship on the relationships, continue to try. I mean, even trust took a big hit for what happened in Minneapolis and happened in certain other areas and certain incidents that happened in our city here. And so I think all those things combined might have people talking to us less. We got to work on trust. If some places we don't have it, we got to try to have that relation to build trust. In places that it's low, make it better, and places that it is good, is sustain it. And we got to do that every single day. And it starts with respect, starts with listening, starts with all those things that I talk about, and that we make sure that we try to execute as best as possible in this environment, sir.
Okay, thank you very much, Chief.
Thank you. Councilmember Spadola.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Chief. It's clear from your comments tonight that, the criminal justice system is just totally failing Wilmington as a whole, leading to more shootings, inevitably leading to more victims. So I'm curious, the system is there's so many facets to it, from the police officers to the courts, to the correctional system. What would you say as council members is most actionable for us in terms of all the weak links in the criminal justice system that are leading to these shootings? What would you like us as a council? How could we help fix some of these weak links that are letting, these people committing gun violence back out onto the street time and time again?
Right. Well, I believe, as I just talked to Councilman Johnson about some of the challenges, I believe, and corporations, everybody's been disrupted. And last year, there's huge disruptions. And I believe a lot of people hoping, let's wait till we come out of it and we'll go back to normal. But now people just I think criminal justice system starting to adjust. And instead of waiting to come out of it, you have to adjust to it. There's things with COVID that's in the jails. You got to make sure that people that are incarcerated are treated fairly and make sure that we protect them as well from this virus. So there's a lot of things that have gone in this year that could help contribute if we're not going to some people that are arrested for violence, what might in the past been put, remanded or high bail. That's not happening now, and that might help contribute to conflicts with more people out in the community. And I think really we've had our conversations. Things really got better. If you saw the Nixle alerts and you see those things, you started seeing higher bail conditions at the original bail hearings. And, and I'm hoping that it's a positive trend that people understanding that, hey, only if you look at gun arrests, it's only 2 to 3% of all arrests that the Wilmington Police Department makes. And think of the damage of only 2 to 3% that are carrying firearms out there can do to a community. And we're talking about shootings and homicides here. We can prioritize that. We've done that. We've done that before. I've done that in other places when you say we can't prioritize 2 to 3%. And that's what group violence intervention does. But right now, the system is adjusting to this COVID. And I'm hoping we get back where we're starting to function the way it should be. It should be compassionate, should be about rehabilitation. I'm on 4 subcommittees about criminal justice reform. I want to help make sure that we don't incarcerate unfairly. I want to make sure those things go down. I want to make sure, but the thing is, why we're doing that, we got to make sure that if we're wholesalely going to allow people to come out that are nonviolent, we got to make sure the ones that are causing these shootings don't get swept up with that. And we got to really concentrate and on those individuals. And like I said, through GVI, it's about getting them help, getting them social services, moral voice of the community, get them in the room, get them to put the guns down. But there has to be consequence if they don't heed those messages. And these are some of the things coming out of this we got to get back to. So, Councilman, I know it's difficult to legislate from the city area, but you do have a voice. Constituents tonight hearing this, asking these questions, what my concerns are and what I'm seeing, and numbers show 2%, 2 to 3% of our arrests are firearm arrests, illegal possession of firearm. And carrying an illegal firearm is a gateway crime to murder. And I think we have to get tough and serious about people that are willing to pick up a gun and then willing to pick up a gun and shoot at people. I've done that in other places. And when we got serious about that, shootings went down, gun possession went down, less people incarcerated. And the cities that I've been in, it was safer in those areas. It's tough to put me on where the issue is. There's a whole lot of reasons, including making sure we do a better job at what we're doing to make sure we present the best cases possible.
Thank you, Chief. Councilmember Harley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Real quick, I appreciate the metrics that you shared, Chief. I guess you alluded to the teenagers or youth that are getting out with no bail. I wanted to pretty much ask, why are they getting out without bail? But I just kind of heard through your response and your statement that you just made. I believe that that's being addressed. But the one point that I wanted to make is it sounded like when Councilmember Johnson had asked, how is the state supporting and what type of dollars are actually going towards helping the city around public safety? It sounds like to me, the majority of those funds are going towards prevention as it related to those different organizations that you mentioned. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and I do believe, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, as they say. However, when I think about what's going on in the city of Wilmington, I'm a native Wilmingtonian. I've been living in Wilmington all of my life. And I really honestly cannot remember it being this bad. as it relates to the shootings, the time of day. There was a time when shootings used to take place at night or when it was dark. Now, people are shooting people any time of the day. And I guess what I wanted to know is, do you meet with the Attorney General? Because I do know the Attorney General is basically considered the top legal officer, as it relates to criminal justice. And I'm just curious, is it really a crisis? I mean, is this really being taken like this is a really serious matter to be meeting more regularly than usual? And like, is that happening? I mean, I don't know. I believe that y'all are doing a good job and trying to do your best, but something has to be done differently than what was being done before all these shootings started escalating to the point where they are. So that's my question. Are you meeting with the Attorney General or with the state, to really come up with strategic plans in terms of, and I'm not asking what the plans are. I'm just asking, is it happening? Is something different taking place than business as usual before these numbers started skyrocketing?
Well, the simple answer is yes, absolutely. And meeting more now than we ever have. And that started in 2017 because actually those numbers, when I first came to Wilmington, wasn't to really, May 1st was really when CompStat started in 2017. But back in 2017, those first 4 months, probably the most violent time probably on record for a 4-month period back in 2017. And, some of the things that we did to get a hold of those and is to work with the state police, the county police, because people that are going to cause violence don't know boundaries. And some of the conflicts go back and forth between us, state, county. What we did is we pulled together, we do intelligence meetings on Monday morning. That's with the U.S. Attorney, the Attorney General, which is Kathy Jennings' office, because they might be law enforcement, but they should have a prosecution strategy. We have the enforcement operational strategy, and we have to work hand in glove and talk about these incidents, talk about the people that are out there causing these type of crimes. And in those meetings, state police, county police, detectives, Department of Corrections, parole, probation, ATF, DEA, FBI, U.S. Marshals. We do an intelligence meeting on every Monday, and that's one of the things that I asked to have, and that we meet regularly, make sure we're sharing information to make sure that no one's missing anything, or there's a case that's going on that we can't all collectively put our minds together. We meet every day in this room. COVID now I can't, but on Mondays in the afternoon. And then we meet on Wednesdays, and then we meet an intelligence meeting with the county. And then on Thursdays, we do CompStat. And then Friday, we meet on Friday afternoons to make sure that we're covering everything. And there's real-time intelligence that's going back and forth, that even with the group violence intervention, we have assigned U.S. Attorney, assigned Attorney General's office. We have assigned state police, county police. We have a multi-jurisdictional coordination that's going on in everything we're doing, and our relationships are getting stronger. But this year, there's a little bit of a fall from this past year. It was one shooting is one too many. One homicide is one too many. It did have an uptick, but this was indicative across the whole United States, in every city throughout the United States. There's a plan on how we got to 2018 and how we did things together. There's been disruptions, and conversations I've had with the Attorney General, I have with the U.S. Attorney, when these numbers about juveniles, we started seeing a high amount of juveniles that were getting shot and getting picked up for guns. When we sat down to make sure we adjust to COVID back in July, August of this year, we really sat down and what are we missing? What can we do better? What can we get back to? And I'm happy to say, well, it's never happy, but it slowed down, and the juvenile arrests for gun arrests started going down, and less juveniles were getting shot because of the plans that we put in place. So we started finishing with some progress. We're trying to bring it into this year and try to make sure that if you look at the numbers, that there are higher years than numbers right now getting off in the beginning of this year. So I know when we're dealing with it, one is one too many. Try to tell, if even when we had huge reductions in 2018, try to tell your next door neighbor that had a family member was shot that things are better. It's not going to happen because that person's dealing with their certain pain that happened. And we have to understand that. But yes, quick answer was yes. Long answer is absolutely yes, all the time.
Okay, and I really do appreciate that explanation because to the community, my impression from the community a lot of times is that the community doesn't feel as though that our law enforcers are doing enough. And I think a lot of times that perception is because they haven't heard a conversation like this. They haven't heard, how the city and the state, how you're meeting and how you're strategizing to address this issue. So I really do appreciate it because again, I hear it a lot. What is the chief doing? What is the police department doing? What is the attorney general doing? So I hear that all the time. And so going forward, lastly, Madam Chair, this is my last point. So going forward, what would you recommend would be a ideal way to just connect with the community, even if it's on a quarterly basis, just share updates like what we're talking about and sharing tonight?
Well, the first thing I would, right now, there's more sharing of information. ComStat, which is the numbers broken down, how we're doing compared to years past in each area for citywide with 3 sectors, and each sector has 3 districts that covers your geographical area of where you'd want to look to see how we're doing with crime in those areas. We have a thing called Crime View. All this is on our website. And then you can look at crime that's happening in your neighborhood, around your neighborhood. You can geofence a certain area. You can go back 6 months and you can look at what's going on. This information was never shared before. And these are the type of things if you can help us get that out, we go to every civic associations. We've given out flyers. If we can get that information out, a more informed public is better. And we can work with each other when we know what's going on. And what has taken a hit is we went to every community meeting, but a lot of these communities and these civic associations don't have the technology to do Zoom. So we lose that. And the best way to get this across is that our captains in each of their respective areas and the lieutenants and the officers that work that area were talking about these things. And even I was able to go to a heck of a lot more community meetings and then deal with people on their questions. Not that they'd have to wait for a public safety meeting to hear these things, but in between this time, what used to happen is that if you waited for the Uniform Crime Report to come out, the FBI report, 2020 that just finished a month ago, you wouldn't see till October. And some police departments do that. What we do is we put it out each week, what's going on in the ComStat report in relation to years past. And in the Crime View, you can look at daily in real time this information. So we're trying to put out as much information as possible to make sure that we have an informed public and then we can all work together, help reduce this crime. And those are the things. But my advice is that once we can get these community meetings going, if they can get up with Zoom, these things we can talk about instead of talking about a citywide basis, but down in Southbridge, having that community meeting down there gets more localized and more specific to the needs of the individuals that want to know what's going on in their community, not so much what's going on in the whole city.
All right, thank you.
Chief, I have one question. When you were talking about all the agencies that you're meeting with, is the head of the JP included in all these meetings?
So the judiciary branch, what we did, talking about group violence intervention, and really, as we started to see this, the spike in violence happening, coming through the summer and towards the end of the summer, we have sat down with our intelligence officers that we do once a year, and we sit down with the JP court judges, the CCP court judges, Superior Court judges, and and the juvenile court commissioners, and talk about the issues that are going on. They have to have judicial independence, but they also can see exactly what we're seeing out there. And what we do, Madam Chair, even at these cases, even preliminary hearings or first hearings for juveniles, we're working well with the juvenile courts to make sure we go on the record to say, hey, this juvenile right now is, if you release this juvenile out right now, they might be a victim of, a shooting immediately, because we know what's going on, because they're actually on Facebook threatening each other. And you can see that. And I'm trying to keep these kids alive. I don't want to see anyone incarcerated, but I want them rehabilitated to help them so they're not going to have these problems, especially the young kids. My God, at those ages that I talked about with guns and being in fear, we got to get them some help and just release them back out to the environment where they're in front of us or getting shot at or shooting. That's not helping anything. We got to have a better plan.
Chief, I'm being serious about this. Was that a yes? JP is involved in it?
Yes, JP is involved. And
okay.
and the Nixle, if you see some of the if you see the Nixle announcements, alerts that have gone out from our department on gun arrests,
yes.
We started seeing substantially more bail coming out, higher bail, which was helping. That drove where in the summer, almost 70% of the individuals we arrested were getting back out. Now it's down to 58%.
Right. Okay, thank you. Councilmember Dixon.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have a lot of questions. I'm trying to make this as simple as possible, Chief. One is, I know in what Councilman Harley was bringing up as far as the community wanting more opportunities to hear what the plans are and how we're addressing them. I think we have to start thinking outside the box other than going to the civic association meetings if they're not happening, but utilizing WITN, the News Journal, DETV, these different outlets to really get to the community, to let them know what's going on. I think they want to see more presence of the police, more taking a stance on what is actually happening, more than it coming sometimes from us. So I think that's somewhat what we've been seeing in other cities too, is that some of their chief is coming to a podium at a press conference, things of that sort, and kind of giving updates on what's going on. I think that would also be a way to get the information out so that people understand what's going on, especially if you're saying that 60% of most of the individuals being released back into the community. And I couldn't remember, what was the age group again for those individuals?
That was all individuals that were being released. I used the whole number of 307 individuals. Right. I'm sorry, 307 arrests, 293 defendants, because 13 were arrested twice.
Mm-hmm. And then what was the age group of those individuals?
That would be all ages. I did break down the juveniles.
Okay. All right. And then also, as far as I know, we're because I've also heard that too, with even in the detention centers, that a lot of times the kids are being threatened as they are in there, and when they're planning to release, that folks, some of the kids in the neighborhoods know when they may be released, and also know that there is an opportunity for them to get killed when they're coming out. Because they know when they're being released from the detention center. So I think that loop, definitely we need to figure out how to close so that some of that privacy, but I know some that I know from community members have said, the kids heard about the threats while they're within like Ferris or some of these other detention centers where, the juveniles know that they're being released at a certain period of time.
Councilman, I'm not too sure about that. What I said is that if they're arrested for a firearm and if they're carrying a firearm, releasing them back in the community without getting the help sometimes can create a conflict or put them in danger. I'm not sure about the community or anyone knowing when they're released. That loophole, as far as that's news to me. As far as how that information is getting out there, unless it's from information coming from the individual.
All right, so I think that's something that we should definitely look into, because that has come up as some issues regarding when folks are being released. But also, how do you work with rehabilitating whole families and communities? Because we know we're rehabilitating a person, understood, right? And getting them to a place where they can interact into society. But how are we interacting in that space of rehabilitating communities and families, because they're ultimately affected just as much as the individual?
Councilwoman, great question. We have a victim services unit and victim response that they're assigned. And, Councilman Johnson, I think I missed that because a lot of them are on state grants as far as what they can do, assigned here in headquarters. And they also have an offsite to interview people to make sure that they have a neutral area. But they go out to families. If we see trauma, if we see any type of violence, and we're always in people's homes calling 911 calls, we see things. If it hasn't rose to a level of abuse or neglect, we'll see, we'll have to take immediate action. But we make those referrals to our victim services unit to make sure that these families are getting the help that they need. Because the one thing that we've talked about, and it's been mentioned, the CDC study as far as about trauma with young children and overall families, because once they have the trauma, it affects the learning, and then affecting learning, it starts to spiral down the issues that someone might have. And we want to make sure we get ahead of that. And we had them sent before the council, I believe last year before COVID, to show exactly the work that they're doing, working in conjunction with us to make sure that we can help those families out. Secondly, group violence intervention for the individuals identified in those groups with the highest propensity for violence. It's a thing called the custom notifications. Although we can't get them into groups now, where we give the message, we're not just sitting idle. We've adjusted with both juveniles and adults that we visit their location with social workers, and we visit with police, and former police chief Bobby Cummings is the group violence initiative director. And we go to their homes, and it's not just, hey, what's happening with this child? What can we do? But how can we help the family as a whole to try to make sure that with the state social services and individuals to make sure that we can help that whole family? Because as you said, Councilwoman, it's about the family as well and how it's affecting that individual. So we got to help them all together if we hope to get young adults or juveniles put on the right path or give them a chance.
If I can do one more follow-up question.
Yes.
As far as the chief, I know you also mentioned that you're working with different outside organizations. So are you splitting that cost with them as far as services that are being provided in the city? And then also which services are more helpful than others?
So we're talking about the social services,
yes.
Councilwoman. That's actually all supplied through the group violence intervention, and the state actually, the family support services, their cabinet is and oversees that, and so health services, 3 different cities. So I'm trying to get my acronym, but it's the kids and the health services cabinets for the state. They actually, the people they have assigned comes out of their costs from the state, and also those social services are not coming out of our costs, other than the cost of us being involved in this, but and making sure that we can help try to improve those lives and keep people out of life of crime. But I'll take that investment any day over having to make arrests or be at a violent crime scene. So I think that investment's worth it. So that's all picked up by the state.
Mm-hmm. And I would also just, Chief, think about the help initiative that the county does, especially around a substance abuse issue. 'Cause it's a high percentage in the city of Wilmington. So I definitely would think about implementing and working on that as well, in addition to some of the other partners you've been working with.
Yeah, it's, you know, we've taken a look at that, Councilwoman, and one of the things is that they have caseworkers, and then we almost do almost the same system, but we make sure that it goes before the judicial branch so they can make an evaluation, and diversion. They get money from the state. I sit on the Criminal Justice Council just as a board member and signed off on how much money they're getting to deal with substance abuse of individuals. And then they make sure that there's diversion and follow up on it. So there's only kind of one difference, is that which way do they go before there's diversion? Does it start with the police officers and then they do the case management and then assign a warrant afterwards? Or do the courts, where I feel that they actually have a little more control over the individual to ensure that they follow up on some of the conditions of their release or the conditions of their sentence, if there is a sentence, or the diversion. So it's we kind of do the same thing and make the referrals. So I don't think it's a bad program out there, but we're pretty close to it as well, except that one immediately stays with the police, the other goes through the judicial branch.
Chief, can I just have more information on that as we move forward? And that'll be my end. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yes, you can.
Councilmember Gray.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
If I may, excuse me, Councilmember, before you start, please, for the members of the public, since council members have taken up all the time that was announced that we were going to spend, I'm going to increase the time for another half an hour at 7:30. Thank you, Councilmember Gray.
Thank you. And I was going to bring up that point that I hope council members didn't take up all time, but of course I'm going to make a comment also. Madam Chair already brought up the point of asking Chief Tracy whether you were interacting with the magistrate court, because I know when I was on the court, we had strict guidelines for bail. And that's what you and your statistics were discussing. A lot of people were released on bail, had unsecured bail. And I find, I don't know if it's changed, and this is something for the community to look at, we have a very lax attitude toward juveniles. We don't think that they are capable of what they're doing, but juveniles on the street, they realize that there's very little punishment for what they do. And a lot of times they're being used, I'm sure Chief Tracy, you know this, but they're being used by adults in the community to commit the crimes and to hold the guns, because they realize not much is going to happen to the juveniles. So this is a very complicated system and problem, so I don't know how to resolve it, but I do understand your dilemma. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Johnson.
Yes, Chief Tracy, how?
Quickly, please.
Yes.
Thank you, Councilmember.
Yes, thank you so much. Just, do you have an idea of total calls in the year for 2020? How many calls are related to violent crime as opposed to other calls? Do you have that data, Chief?
Councilman, I can break that out for you, but in the amount of close to 100,000 calls a year, just an average, it's in our report. So I'll just use that as an average, 100,000 calls a day. And then there's probably double, triple of the interactions that we have that don't go reported. Violent crime is actually a very small percentage of our calls in the overall 911 or work that we do. I would say it's less than 10%. That's just me going from statistics when I've looked at this before, but we certainly can get you that number, sir.
Okay, so but in terms of violent crime calls, are those actually going up, or are they steady or going down?
Right now, I would say I'm really working off more of the arrest statistics and the type of work that we're doing. They usually stay somewhere similar, but I can look at the Statistical Analysis Center I can look at, ask the state and also ask our communications center to take a look at that and break some of those numbers out for you, sir.
Okay, and Chairwoman Walsh, one final question. Has there ever been consideration, or at least department looking at the city actually controlling a social work agency part of the police department? Because it seems like all these questions, again, I know it goes back to this money's from the state, this money's from the state, this money is from the state. But at the end of the day, we do sit here and unfortunately the resources aren't aligning the right way, or at least the state's not doing the right or aligning it the right way. So as council, is that something we can look into and explore in terms of reallocating resources so that the city, similar to education, there's a fight for that at Wilmington School District in education, where we control our social service dollars so we can serve our community. Is there thoughts of that?
Councilman, is that directed at me?
Yes, it was.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Has there been thoughts about, because you've worked in other jurisdictions, about having a social work
One
part?
thing, the other two places I worked, they were self-supported, all these things. This is something I've had to adapt to in the city of Wilmington. Forget about social services, but the anchor of every community is the district schools that serve the community. And I kind of came into a unique experience coming here. And I feel that probably can contribute to things, because that's where all the resources, that's where the social services, that's where everything, and then the sense of community that can be done for our young people. So that's new to me. And I've had to really study that and get a historical basis on how am I going to work with when kids are going out 15 miles and coming back around 3 o'clock in the afternoon. We start to see an uptick in calls because kids are coming back from different schools where they live in the same neighborhood but go to different schools, and therefore there's more conflicts. If we had neighborhood schools, I think we can resolve a lot of that. And as far as the social service piece, secondly, I mean, you had the mayor and the council that actually had a little bit of control over all these services that you would be speaking to them, asking those questions if they're working with the police, and also the same thing with the educators. So and that's why it's good to form these relationships. I think we have really good relationships in the way it's set up to try to make it as best as possible. There's always room for improvement, always in the police department. But I think sometimes the system sometimes works against itself. And if you don't have all these services that are coming out of the city, I would agree, but it's not the situation we're in. And so we're going to try to make it work no matter what, and without excuses.
Okay, thank you very much, Chief.
Councilmember Congo, Council President Congo.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Just a quick statement. What Chief Tracy just hit on, and Councilman Johnson, is we really have to take a serious look at our public education system. We cannot legislate our way out of this situation. We cannot expect the police department to fix it. We can't police our way out of this situation. We really need to have this kind of same energy and same conversation with our governor and with our with our legislators in Dover to really address our school system. I know there is conversation around that right now, but I think that that's really where we need to focus our energy and our conversations and our money. We can't keep being so reactive to the situation that's going on in our city. And the only way that I think that we can really address it and fix it is through education and through mentorship. But I applaud the police department for their efforts. The chief and I had a conversation a few months ago, and I was just astounded at the numbers that he just shared with everyone publicly. So I don't think that we can continuously blame the police department and expect them to police our way out of the situation. I think that's unfair for us to be able to expect that from them, because it's impossible. So I just look forward to us having the same conversation with those elected officials and with those school districts that can really affect what our children are seeing and learning, and how we're molding them to be responsible young men and women. Thank you.
Thank you. That's all of council. Now we'll extend this to the public. And you have 3 minutes. DeMarquis Hall.
Thank you, Councilwoman Walsh. Now, Chief Tracy, I had a question earlier and you didn't answer my question. I asked you about body cameras. That question's for the public, it's not just for myself. I like to know when they're being implemented. I know that the grant was received and that I also know that there was a young man who was killed by Newcastle County Police just last month, and they already had body cameras. I'm aware that the cameras can be turned off and on, and that there's wrong that still can be done with them being on, but that is a definite sign of guilt if they're turned off when you kill somebody. I want to know the answer to that question before I ask you anything else. What's going on with the body cameras?
Madam Chair, I know
Yes.
it's not on the agenda. I'd be more than happy to speak to it, but I'm going to defer to you on this.
Because I've already had to cut him off, if you could give like a 1 minute answer.
Absolutely.
Because it's not on the agenda. So yes, please do it that way.
Sure. Well, Mr. Hall, we continue to move forward to the implementation of body-worn cameras. And to date, we have developed a plan. We've applied for and have been awarded just the other day. The money came through from the federal grant. It came a little later than we thought from the United States Department of Justice in the amount of $630,000 to help us offset roughly half the cost of the body-worn camera for each of our police officers. We worked with the administration and city council to present a budget amendment to allocate the remaining funding for equipment and for a sergeant and 3 police officers to be permanently assigned to administer this program. We're being assisted by the City Human Resources Department with a draft policy that they're finalizing with the FOP, which is just a courtesy for them to take a look at it and see that, make sure that we're following best practices and any concerns that they might have, so we can get this in place when we're ready to be up and running with the cameras. And this policy is going to be reviewed as part of the grant by the federal government to make sure that we're following best practice as well while we're getting this grant. We work with the finance department and procurement staff to purchase the equipment, and with our federal state departments. As I wrote this, we approved the release for the federal funds to be released to us, which just happened. So I would say it's moving. We want to get there as soon as possible. Mr. Hall, it's not just the community that is looking forward to having these body-worn cameras, but also our officers. There's enough requests coming from the officers. When are we getting started? When are we getting started? Because they actually want to wear them as well. And unanimously, I think it's a win-win for everyone.
Thank you, Chief.
So you don't have a date or a roundabout?
It's in the process of being done. I want to manage expectations, because if I give you a date, you might be holding me to it. I would say in the next few months, we'll be up and running. There's training. There's people that come in from the company that we use, Taser, that have to train the trainers. We got to make sure the systems are set up. There's lines where you put the battery and you download to the cloud.
Okay,
we want to make sure that when we put this in, we implement it correctly. So we want this as quickly as possible, Mr. Hall.
All right. You mentioned trauma. The public deserves a date because people are traumatized by the police. When they hear
Mr.
police
Hall.
sirens, when they see you, they're
Mr. Hall.
traumatized by what it is that's happened to them in the past. So
Mr.
please
Hall.
rush it. Do everything
we're
that you can to
dealing-
make sure that this happens as soon as possible now, because it's past due.
We hear you, and we will make this happen as soon as possible. Make sure it's rolled out in the proper manner.
Thank you. Christina? Full name, please.
Christina Kelly. And I thank you, Chairwoman, for another opportunity to speak. Chief Tracy, I'm sure you were probably expecting for me to speak here. You stated during your opening statements and then continuously that the community has not been communicating with you, or that communication with the community has been more difficult during COVID. Sir, in the same breath, however, you did also mention about how there have been protests almost every weekend or almost every day. That is the community communicating with you. So I guess my question to you, for transparency's sake, and to cut the BS, in all honesty, you want the community to communicate with you. Where's your willingness to come to us, to come to these protests when we're trying to communicate when all other methods have failed? And what is your assurance to us that you're not going to have your officers violating civil rights by blocking protesters from moving down Market Street, or then assaulting and then arresting 14-year-old minors and charging them with multiple felonies from attempting to communicate with you in an attempt to sit as a community and solve these problems? Where is your commitment to us?
Christina, you almost used up your 3 minutes just in asking the question, which was filled with probably 10 insults. But go ahead, Chief.
Well, as you can see, I didn't say the community wasn't communicating with us. I said it's been hard to communicate in a normal setting, not just in protests, but how we have gained relationships throughout the city, having the same officers on the same beat, same district every time they work, so we can get to know the community. The community gets to know us, so we know the conditions, and we're hearing them as far as a lot of things that are going on. We hear the protests. We've been out there. I've been out there. And the way we've had these protests, I'm really proud of protesters, and I'm proud of this city and how this city's been handled. These protests where we protect the First Amendment rights for free speech, and we also give a lot of leeway to control traffic, to make sure individuals where they've been hit by cars or buses come through, we do that to protect your safety, to make sure we can help facilitate that. There are instances that we try to control areas where people go, or what people are going to do. We make those decisions for safety reasons and intelligence reasons. But those are the things that I think we should be proud of what happened in the city, other than May 30th. Other than that night, I think that's where things went awry, but it never went awry again. And
right.
But we had 2 arrests you're talking about.
September 13th.
But you know what? In the overall, compared to what's happened in other cities and the way that the outcomes, our officers have been very respectful. We've used a lot of constraint. We have not gone out on mass arrests. We've let people speak, but it's not a perfect world.
You violated the rights of 40 Wilmingtonians and are still
Okay,
in the
your 3
process
minutes are up, actually.
of and are in the process of prosecuting a 14-year-old, but you want us to believe that you care about.
Oh, come on now.
Kendra McDowell, please. Kendra McDowell.
Yes, hello. My name is Kendra McDowell. I think this message is for the chief, not you, Ms. Walsh.
Well, I'm running the meeting, Ms. McDowell. I make the rules.
I don't believe the community is blaming the police. What the community is saying is, where have y'all been? Where's the compassion from y'all for what's taking place in our communities? Why haven't you publicly spoken on the shootings that are taking place in our communities? Why can't police get out of their cars while in our neighborhoods? Why do they have to sit in the cars the whole time? I believe we need officers to do what retired former Lieutenant Dan Southman was doing, which was getting to know us and helping us to be able to trust the police, as well as the police to start trusting us. That's it, and I'm thank you, Ms. Walsh. Have a good night.
Thank you. Thank you for your comment. Well, that concludes the meeting today. I thank the chief and the staff for appearing here this afternoon and this evening. And would anyone like to make a motion?
Yes, why can't I'm not a committee member?
It has to be a committee member.
Motion to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Brigida,
Brigida, are you there?
she's on mute. I second.
Thank you. It's moved and seconded that this meeting is adjourned. Thank you all. And I'll see you at next month's meeting.
Thank you, Chief.
Safe.
Be careful out there.
Thank you.